A radical socialist is on the verge of taking over America's largest city. Zohran Mamdani, a far-left candidate backed by the Democratic Socialists of America, is promising free housing, government-run grocery stores, and even the decriminalization of crimes like shoplifting and drug use. Critics warn his agenda would bankrupt New York and turn it into a progressive experiment at the expense of working families. I'm CBN's Dan Andros, and I am joined right now by CBN's Gary Lane to talk about this shocking development. I mean, Gary, this guy seems like he came out of nowhere. He doesn't have a background of running large corporations or large organizations, which usually is sort of a prerequisite, or at least having a smaller governmental role where you have some responsibility, to launching into being the mayor of New York with these ideas. I mean, we could have some big consequences here, but the polls are showing him way ahead. Appreciate you being here, Gary. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a big job, isn't it? Mayor of New York City, one of the largest cities in the world, and he has some big ideas. I think the key here, Dan, is does he really believe in the feasibility of these ideas? I mean, are they actually going to work? And a lot of people have doubt, and there are some people who believe that he doesn't really believe it, but he's pressing forward with that to get elected.
Yeah, and you know, some of these ideas, let's go through some of these here,
Sure.
Gary, because you know, it just seems, I mean, even a lot of Democrats are worried about this from their view, because he would be left of left on the Democrat scale of things. So, you know, this is a high profile position. This is not like being tucked away in some corner of America trying this experiment on a town of like 500 people or something. This is New York City. Things are going to kind of get noticed here, and Democrats could pay a hefty price if things don't go their way. But let's look at some of these ideas. One of the ones that caught a lot of attention early on was this idea for city-owned grocery stores. Tell me about that one.
Well, that's interesting. City-owned grocery stores. I mean, does he really think that's going to work, Dan? I remember going into the Soviet Union back just shortly before the Soviet Union fell, and I went into state-owned grocery stores. And you looked there were all kinds of people wandering around trying to find things, and they couldn't find hardly anything. They'd go to the grocery or the freezer case, and there was hardly anything in the freezer case. But yet they would go one aisle over and find a whole shelf full of ketchup. So they could have plenty of ketchup to eat, but they couldn't find meat and fish and those type of things in the freezer case. In addition to that, there were so many shortages there at that grocery store. People were complaining they just couldn't get what their family needed because of the black market. There was a black market created, but they could get things on the black market, but you had to pay. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you have state-owned businesses and grocery stores, and the food supply is controlled by the state, not by the market. People can't get what they want. Of course, the market, you get what is demanded. If people are demanding a certain product, then there's plenty of that there because there's money to be had, money to be made in that. But a state-owned grocery store, it just screams of corruption as well.
Well, it reminds me too, Gary, and you might remember this story back when Boris Yeltsin went grocery shopping. I think it was in Texas, it's Houston somewhere. And he like couldn't believe it. He was looking around at all this stuff and he was shocked at like all of the different selections and the things you could get. And a lot of people credit that with sort of obviously, you know, Russia's still got a lot of the remnants of the old Soviet Union there, but I think a lot of people credited at least some turnaround with that visit because he was so stunned by capitalism.
Well, it reminds me, and I'm old enough to remember this, when Nikita Khrushchev came to America and saw all the cars in the parking lot of the factory, of an automobile factory, and he thought these were cars for sale. And they said, no, these are the cars that are owned by the people who work here. He couldn't believe it. They could actually afford the products that they built and created. But yes, that's exactly what happened with Yeltsin, and it's astonishing for people who have never been to America to see the wealth and the availability of products. And one of the main reasons is because we have a free market economy, right? You're going to make money on whatever sells. So you give people what they want, what they desire, and then you try to sell them on things they don't really need,
Right.
but they think they need.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, so the feasibility there, I mean, we know that this undermines competition. This is ultimately going to be, you know, a disaster and would raise prices astronomically. It just won't be as run nearly as efficiently. We've all been to a DMV. Imagine that with your food. It's like, it just can't function the way a normal business would function, because there just are not those same incentives there to do a good job and to earn revenue, because you'll be out of a job if things don't go well if you're running your own business. Whereas the government, they don't have to worry about it. They just mandate that you go here to this store, and well, if it's not going the way we want, or we're not getting enough money, we just tax you some more, or we just do what we want to do. I mean, it never works out, and history has shown this time and time again. So the fact that people keep bringing these ideas, it makes you wonder how in the world. I mean, you've reported on so many different, you've been to communist countries, Gary. I mean, this is what you see in those countries time and time again. How are people not getting this?
Well, they don't get it because they are not from a communist country. I mean, the people who are from communist countries who've come out of that, they understand it because they've experienced it. If they come from Cuba, Venezuela, from the former Soviet Union, they know exactly what they're up against. And again, Dan, I can't emphasize enough, when you have state-owned grocery stores, they are ripe for corruption, because let's say you get some good quality steaks in, right? They're not going to last long, number one. But how about a few here, a few there, a couple of the workers maybe siphon off a few, and then they have a black market when people come in and they can't get the steaks that they want. There's a black market created, and then they'll sell them for you at a price even higher than what you'd pay at the state-run store, but you'll get your steak. And so it creates a whole black market, and it's ripe for corruption.
Right. I mean, it's like the big complaint that socialists often use to gain traction is to complain about the greedy CEOs and the corporate CEOs. And there are certainly some of those who are price gouging. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's no argument there. But to act as if the government will be this benevolent distributor of goods with no corruption, as you're mentioning, is just, it's silly. You're putting blinders on, and you're just moving, because the problem is sinful human beings, particularly ones who aren't even trying to follow God, right? Secular ones, they have zero motivation to do the right thing. It's just not there. It doesn't exist. So inevitably, like you said, that corruption's going to land at the government level. And if they have control over the means of production, that is not a good thing. And again, we've seen this at history over and over and over again. Another big one he has mentioned, Gary, another plan here has been his plan for a $30 an hour minimum wage here within the next 5 years. Now, what would this do to jobs in New York?
Well, you know what that will do. If someone is getting a minimum wage of $30 an hour, what happens to the people who are already making $25 or $30 an hour, right? They're going to want more. If an entry worker is getting $30 an hour, and some guy who's maybe your manager of your store is only making 20 or 25, he's going to say, wait a minute, I've got all these added responsibilities. I need at least $40 an hour. So it just every place along the job scale, the wages go up. You can't pay an entry worker the same as a manager. So if if your manager's making 30 and all of a sudden the entry worker gets 30, manager's going to want $40 or $50 an hour. So imagine what that will do to inflation, and prices will go up.
Yeah, because they're going to have to make it up somewhere. They're going to have to make up that cost somewhere, and it ends up landing on the consumer. And just as you said,
not only that, Dan, I mean, think about this. I mean, small businesses will not be able to afford that. So what's going to happen? They're going to shut down their businesses. So you're going to have all these empty storefronts in New York City, and no one working. The unemployment will skyrocket.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes you wonder, too, if they really think this is a good idea. Like, let's just arbitrarily skyrocket up the minimum wage. It's like, well, why stop at 30? Why not make it 150? Because
they raised it to $20 an hour in California, and they've lost at least 18,000 jobs since then.
Yeah, I mean it's basic math. I mean, if you have a job, especially like you said, small businesses get devastated by this because they often rely on part-timers, college kids, those sorts of things. How do you afford to pay somebody if you're tripling what you have to pay them? It's automatically by necessity. You're either you're going to cut people, and you're going to have to cut hours as well, and you might go out of business because you just can't function unless you jack the prices up of things. But if you have an item that can't do that, like a burger, you can't be charging $30 for a hamburger. It's just not gonna work. People aren't gonna do it. So
And what you end up doing is creating a job market where everybody's working part-time jobs, and to pay the kind of rents that people are paying now and mortgages, I mean, you'd have to take 3 or 4 jobs, part-time jobs, just to make ends meet, and that's not good for the economy. I've seen that in the communist countries where people are worried. You go to Russia today, people are working 2, 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and they're exhausted at the end of the day, and they don't get many benefits either.
why, Gary? Why do people fall for this? I mean, this right now, if you look at some of the websites that track where people are sort of betting on, it's a good indicator of what people think is going to happen, where they're placing. Like you can kind of like a sports gambling site, you can gamble on things that are actually happening, like a mayor race. And when you go to those sites and look at just where people are thinking the outcome is going to be, it's like mid 80s, 80% that Mamdani's going to win. So why are people really going for this message? And B, what happens to New York City if this guy does get in?
Well, I think people like free stuff, right? Who doesn't like free stuff?
Yeah.
You like to get free stuff, and so if someone is promising you $30 an hour and free bus fares and low cost this, low cost that, free childcare, free college tuition, sure, I'm going to vote for that guy because I don't want to have to pay for all this. It's like why do people play the lottery? They play the lottery because they want to get rich quick, and this is nothing more than a scheme to get people to vote for the candidate because they will get free stuff. Remember the Obama phone? Remember people were given free phones and they called it the Obama phone? Politicians have been doing this for years. Let's actually buy votes. It's buying votes by promising all kinds of stuff to people. What is it going to do to New York City? Again, businesses will be shutting down their doors. They won't be able to afford, these small businesses will not be able to afford paying entry-level workers $30 an hour, and then other workers who have been making that even more, $40 and $50 an hour, they'll have to shut their doors. They won't be able to raise their prices to cover the cost because, as you said, Dan, nobody's going to pay, $20 for a hamburger or whatever it may be. So businesses will shut their doors, and then who's going to pay for who is going to pay the money to cover all these costs for free health care, free education, free bus fares, all this free stuff? Mamdani's plan is to raise taxes on the wealthy. Well, you know what the wealthy are going to do? They're going to leave New York City and go elsewhere where they're not taxed to death, where they can actually have a business and make some money. So there you go. All the wealthy will leave. They'll take jobs with them. So you're going to see a terribly depressed city. It will be, Trump is right, it will be the ruin of New York City. It'll be the end of it.
Yeah, the high tax thing is real because if you look at what happened in, I think it was France, they instituted for a while the tax on the rich, which it was something, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it was something about like 75% on the wealthiest 1% for, every dollar they made over $1 million. So now you think businesses who are looking to invest somewhere, let's say they're a multi-million-dollar business. Well, if every penny you invest over $1 million, let's say you put $1 million into something, you're going to make $1 million. You only get to keep 250,000 of that. So it just why would anyone risk that? Why would you say, all right, I'm going to invest $1 million to make $1 million or whatever the number is, but I only get to keep 25% of that? How do you pay, to do that? You have to pay workers to do whatever it is, the job is that you're doing that generates that revenue. It's going to be very, very difficult for any company to function that way. You're just not going to be able to do it. And what happened in France was a lot of the higher income people left, and then you lose your tax revenue. So all this free stuff that you're getting it's taxpayer funded, and obviously mostly by extremely wealthy people who pay a large share of the taxes. And then you lose those people. Well, now who's paying for your free stuff? You know, you kind of lose the cash cow there. It's like a self-defeating system. But like you said, people are just really wooed by the carrot being dangled out in front of them.
Well, isn't it the American way to work hard and achieve? And if you achieve success and you start a business, and then let's say you end up, the business is so successful, you open another one, and before you know, you've got franchises that you're offering, right? You're successful. You've built that, and sure, the workers have helped you build that, but it's your smarts, your hard work, your commitment, long hours, whatever it has taken to build that business. You've done it. So why shouldn't you make money doing that? I mean, you don't do it because you don't want to make money. You want to be successful. You want to make money. You want to provide jobs for people so they can have a good life as well. So why should you be taxed, as you said, maybe 75% or even 50% is too much? Because what you're going to do is you're going to lay off workers. You're going to shut down that business or move elsewhere to a place where you can do business without paying all those taxes. That's what will happen to New York City. It happens all the time. People just don't realize it. So I think, Dan, part of this is just, politicians often play on envy, right? We get envious of people who are successful and make a lot of money. How come I can't be like that? Well, you could be if you had a good education, you worked hard, and maybe you could be that way as well. If you have the smarts to do it and the commitment to do it, no one's stopping you in America. You can do that. But anyway, that's what it's all about. It's playing on class envy there.
Yeah, rich versus poor. 100%. And as Christians, I think, Gary, this type of messaging, this type of wooing with, dangling the carrots and all this stuff and free this and free that, I think kind of grates against the Christian ethic and the Christian worldview, in that these aren't the things that we should be pining for, right? We shouldn't be, not that we should be all, yay, let's all live in poverty. We don't want that. But what we should not be centering our worldview on what can I get? And, who's going to give me the most free stuff? And what makes life the easiest for me? I just don't think that's the mindset that Christians should be in. Yes, as a Christian, I think you want to be in an environment that, like you said, you have the most opportunity to be the most successful, because then as Christians, we can do what the Bible commands us to do, which is to love our neighbor and to help our neighbor, help people in need. You need to have resources and able to do that. And I think when we just get in this mentality of what we're owed, that makes us start looking inward. It looks at what we want. We think that we have to get these things and these material things that we need to survive. We think we get those from some government entity instead of God providing that for us. And I think we miss out on so many blessings when we start worrying and thinking, well, it just comes down to who we vote for.
Well, Dan, I'm sure you've heard people say, look at that CEO and the big bonus, the multi-million-dollar bonus he received, and the workers aren't getting anything. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If it's a publicly owned company, right, they have a board and stockholders who've agreed to this, and they've paid that bonus to that CEO, who obviously deserves it. Maybe they don't, but they have voted to give him or her that bonus. So what should our attitude as Christians be? If the workers aren't getting raises and bonuses, well, that's up to the stockholders and the board. They need to be pressed to give the workers a raise. But aside from that, our attitude as Christians should be good for him or her. They've worked hard. They obviously deserve this. Yay, I'm happy for them. Now I need to work hard, and maybe God will reward me, right?
Yeah,
and show me favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And it's like, I mean, Gary, I know you've been all around the world as well, and you've seen this again and again. I'm not preaching a poverty gospel, but you do see in difficult situations around the world, when people are relying on God, you see a faith that is unlike anything you see often here in America, where people are truly depending on God for just the basic necessities day to day. Again, I'm not saying what I'm saying is I think we get blinded so often by the lure of stuff that we kind of are misguided a little bit in our desires and what we think we need. And I think a lot of these politicians play into sort of those fears and those anxieties of how we're going to provide, and it sort of takes away from our trust in the Lord. But I know you covered this, Gary, on the Global Lane. So tell me about what you guys covered and what else you have coming up on the show.
Well, I covered this last week, and you can still catch that on YouTube. It's an interesting segment with a scholar. Matter of fact, she is a Rhodes Scholar. Her name is Wanjiru Njoya. She is with the Mises Institute, which is a libertarian free market think tank, and she talks about Mamdani. That was last week, and I think you'll still be able to catch that on YouTube if you want to find that segment, also the full program. And this week we talked to Dale Hurd, because he did a fascinating story, I think a wonderful job, on money influence from the country of Qatar, the same country that helped sponsor Hamas and other groups like ISIS, terrorist groups and so forth. They're sending us an airplane. They gave us a 747 airplane for the president to use. Also, they buy influence through their influence with politicians and the companies that they have worked for. Some are right in the Trump administration as well. I'm not bashing the Trump administration, but people need to know that this country, Qatar, is trying to gain influence in the United States. Now, some may say, well, that's good because their money is going to help schools and education and so forth in this country. But what do they want in return? They want it both ways. They want to have favor with the West, as Dale reports, and also support the terrorists at the same time, including Iran. They're very close to Iran economically, not politically, but economically. So we talked to Dale Hurd about that. He also talks to us this week, and that's on Thursday's program, Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. He also talks about CARE. That's a Council on American Islamic Relations. And Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas, is proposing they be investigated by the IRS for their funding of terrorism, alleged funding of terrorism, I must add.
Right.
Although back about 20 years ago, close to 20 years ago, they were an unindicted conspirator, I should say, conspirator, with the Holy Land Foundation, which was connected to Hamas. And so those are very interesting segments. I hope you'll catch them this week.
Will do. We will be on the lookout for those on the Global Lane. As always, Gary, appreciate you stopping by and sharing your insights. And we'll certainly be looking on CBN for more stories on what happens in New York, as we talked about, it's going to have a huge impact on not just the folks of New York, but as New York goes, a whole lot of other conditions go in the country as well. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that.
And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about that. And can you bench press? Are you good at bench pressing, Dan? I guess Mamdani tried that.
But I'm smart enough to know that I shouldn't put myself on national television when trying it, right? I think that's kind of the. I mean, that alone, you should question. I mean, I don't know. You question the smarts there if you're willing to put yourself on camera on that when you probably can't lift much more than the bar. So
yeah, he shouldn't have done it.
No, he shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it. One of those moments that's going to live forever on the internet. So, all right, CBN's Gary Layton. Appreciate it, sir.
See ya.
All right, and thank you all for watching, and make sure you're staying tuned to CBN News and CBNnews.com. God bless. We'll see you next time. All right.